Okay, bro. How are you? Kamusta?
Okay naman. Good to see you again, Richard. It's
Good,
always
good.
good to have a conversation with you.
Medyo alanganin tayo. Okay, ito again. Happy Women's Day. I mean, talaga ibang klase talaga yung mga discussion natin. I really like it. You know, vicarious. Versatile. Medyo vicarious din actually.
Yes.
To be honest about it. Pero mamaya na tayo sa vicarious kasi medyo papunta tayong hugot. To be honest, I'm still recovering from Dune 2. The last thing I expected is actually mahugot pala yung movie na yan. May pagka-past lives. May pagka-ganun na may effect pala siya. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because one of the reasons, of course, I always love our conversation is because, you know, Bitcoin is super hot in every sense of the word this year so far. 2024 has been an amazing year for Bitcoin, and except no surprise, right? Because when last December we were discussing, we were, I think, both completely agreed that there will be a very upward trajectory. It's just a question of how upward and how long. Pag-usapan natin later on. But again, as soon as there was a security exchange clearance of the entry of more institutional investors, which in itself says a lot, we saw a very significant increase. So I think we're looking at 40 to 50% increase in terms of the value of Bitcoin over the past 4 weeks or so. I mean, I was live checking also here in the
Yeah.
Filipinas. There is still volatility. So I mean, this is just the numbers I saw kanina.
Yeah.
There's still volatility, but you know, the trajectory so far is good. So yung mga nakinig kay kay Parang Chris nung December, kung naka-invest kayo ng 10,000 pesos, di ngayon at least mga 14,000-15,000 pesos yan. So that's not too bad, right? And of course, accordingly higher and higher. So Chris, let me first get back to you. So in what sense have things turned out the way expected? In what sense there have been slightly unexpected? And what are the things that you want to look forward before we go back into the more fundamental questions of Bitcoin and why you should invest in it or not, right? Yeah.
Okay. So yung unang-una is what happened that I expected. The pump is what I expected. What I didn't expect is how big the movement is. Siguro maybe if I'm actually curious to see what we talked about in December. How much I said it was going to be around this time. I think I only said about 50,000. I did not expect it to go all the way to 67,000. Kasi yung all-time high noong 2021 was 69,000. We breached that already just last week. And right now, ang nakikita ko compared to the previous cycles is wala na yung volatility na na-experience ko nung time ko. During my time, during the peak and the bear market, talagang grabe yung movement, talagang maha-heart attack ka. Parang may heart attack ka nga pag gumagano yung movement ng Bitcoin. Ngayon, yung movement na sinasabi mo volatile, hindi nga volatile sa akin yan eh. When it goes from 67 to 65, that's not volatile. That for me, that's a normal average market moving for cryptocurrency. So, and if you look at zoom out, pag makita mo yung chart, my God, halos vertical na yung Bitcoin na price paakyat. Wala pa tayo sa halvening na napag-usapan natin. That's going to happen in April when the flow of Bitcoin is actually cut in half. Right now, there are about 900 Bitcoins mined per block, per day, per day. And 900 per day. Eh, ang binibili ng mga asset managers through the ETF is about 11,000 a day. Tapos binibili nila yan through the OTC desk, the over-the-counter desks. Ito yung mga nagbebenta sa mga malalaking institution. Now, hindi nila binibili sa exchange kasi yung mga Bitcoin, binibili sa OTC desk. Ito yung interesting fact. OTC desks have an all-time low in the amount of Bitcoins they can sell. They're running out. The last time I checked, it was under 2,000 Bitcoins available at any time. And they're buying 11,000 a day. So now they're going into the exchanges to try to buy it. Nauubos yung mga Bitcoins available for sale because 76% of all Bitcoin holders are not selling. So ang konti na lang na nabebenta, and that's what's driving the price up.
Right. So before we go into the halving and all, because that raises bigger questions. I mean, the value of a currency is also its scarcity, right? If you keep on creating more of money, it's like Mickey Mouse money, right? So we have to discuss about the technicality of that, and also some discussion we had about inherent value, right?
Yep.
Where you disagreed with me, but what we'll go back to that now. Just for those na siguro hindi nakaka-catch up dun sa discussion natin last December, can you shortly explain itong what was this whole ETF clearance, which everyone was optimistic naman. I think very few people thought it was just a matter of timing. I think it happened a few days later than many people expect. I think we're looking at January 10, right?
Yeah.
And the bump comes actually, I think, more than a month later. It didn't happen immediately. So the bump has been more actually in the past 4 weeks or so. But since last year, since last November, October, we're looking at 156% increase. So that's significant, right? So again, I'm not haters. Yeah, I see the facts, I see the numbers, I see the value. That's why I bother to have this kind of discussion. But can you explain first ano yung mga basic terms na yan? So first of all, what is this whole ETF or
Okay.
exchange traded funds drama all about, and why is it
Okay.
big deal?
Okay, so to begin with, kasi before the ETFs came in, they're exchange traded funds. Para bumili ng Bitcoin, you have to go to a crypto exchange to be able to buy it, which is very difficult for a lot of people. In the United States, it's actually heavily regulated, and a lot of people don't even understand how to click and trade and buy. Ngayon, a lot of Americans are used to buying assets through their broker. Yung broker nila are these asset managers or financial advisors. Now, before the ETFs were approved, all these asset managers, the biggest in the world, the BlackRocks, Fidelity, not Vanguard, so BlackRock, Fidelity, and all of those, they hold about $20 trillion in assets for all their customers. One day, all of them decided and they looked at Bitcoin and suddenly said, "Oh my God, this is an asset that works. This is the future of money. This is a good investment." As soon as sinabi nila yun, and they were all skeptics at the start. They were all haters. They were saying it's going to go to zero and everything. And now they're believers. So what happened? The narrative changed. And then as soon as that happened, because they did this internal study, in that internal study, they recommended you need to have exposure in Bitcoin to protect your assets. As a matter of fact, that protection of assets that they're looking for is at least 5% minimum of all the funds. Actually, they were saying 28% of all your portfolio should be in Bitcoin nga, they were saying in that internal study. Pero externally, public relations, their press releases are at least 2 to 3%. So right now, only 0.4% of the entire funds that they manage is in Bitcoin. And they're planning to raise it all the way to 3%, 2 to 3%, up to 4. Can you imagine how much money is going to flow into Bitcoin? So that's what happened. That's what an ETF does. It allows people to be able to buy Bitcoin through their broker.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the latest numbers. One of the data was is $788 million, like inflows
Wow.
on March 5 alone, right? So I mean, just to put it in context, I think BlackRock's assets are like what, 10 trillion at least,
Yeah.
right? So
10. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying at 3% of 10 trillion will be quite a huge amount of money. So I'm just saying, pitik-pitik pa lang nila yon. But in the same vein, I can also argue back and say, well, maybe this is also them just diversifying and just, making sure that, they don't lose out or anything. But we can have that discussion later on. So thanks first for explaining that. Because the other thing I want to ask also, bro, is, di ba, one of the other problems we have is, saan ka bibili ng Bitcoin? Like I mean, I hear a lot about Binance and all of that, but you
Yeah.
also hear a lot of horrible things about a lot of these organizations. They're facing regulatory scrutiny. They're facing, potential criminal charges. Their CEOs because of involvement, I don't know, in evading Russian sanctions, terrorist groups, blah blah blah. Some of the things that we discussed before. So, kung ikaw isang Pilipino, kaya nga I found a lot of videos on Bitcoin on YouTube actually useless because it's a very American centric ano eh. Kung ikaw ay Pinoy, 'di ba? When the tax regulatory environment is very different. Kaya nga sabi ko, ikaw yung perfect person. I always said, that's why later on, we can have a kind of a manual how to do it, the kind of discussions. Pag sa Pilipinas, so ano yun, sa crypto.com, I mean, saan ka, coin, Maya, Gcash, saan ka ba bibili na sa tingin mo is safer? Kasi now it's much easier to buy on, let's say, traditional, and I think nag-set up
Yeah.
na PDAX yata itong Philippine Central Bank. So, legit na siya in a sense na you don't need to go to dodgy Binance
Right.
sites. I'm just being very practical about the technicalities kasi madali ma-intimidate ang tao eh. Diba?
Okay.
Doon saan ako pupunta? Baka ma-hack yung account ko.
Okay.
Kasi ilalagay mo yung PayPal mo. Diyos ko, baka mawala. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So to begin with, the easiest way to do it is through GCash, Paymaya, or Coins.ph. Personally ako, I like Coins.ph because ang bilis sobra. And the interface, yung itsura, yung user experience, it's so easy to do. And they only do one thing. Crypto to pesos, pesos to crypto. It's so easy. GCash, Maya, okay lang, pero the rates are not that great. Mataas yung spread, ganon. So, Coins.ph is the best for Filipinos. Now, when you talk about Binance, Binance is the biggest exchange in the entire world. I honestly think kaya lang tinake down ng US yung Binance is that was before the ETFs were going to be approved. Kasi they wanted all the ETFs to go through Coinbase, which is a US-based company that's regulated. So they wanted to make sure that you Americans don't have the choice of going into Binance before that ETF was approved. And lahat tayo dapat American companies ang sinusupport. And I think that's why they did it. Number one. Number two, the legislators and also the federal government went after Binance. I think in part because napahiya sila because FTX, a US regulated exchange, was caught with fraudulent activity, majorly fraudulent activity. So they had to, I think it was almost a PR campaign to just show that, yeah, even Binance is screwing up. So that's what happened. Now, not to say that what Binance did is all good. Kasi Binance tried to skirt around the regulatory issues in the US. That's all they did. Again, if you're trying to follow regulations, mali pa rin yun. And they paid the biggest fine in the entire history of
Billions, right?
Binance, 4
Yeah.
billion.
Yeah,
4
4 billion. Yeah.
billion dollars. I mean, that's huge. So, yun. Pero honestly, for me, if you talk about safety of your money, you're not you might find this weird when I say this. I actually don't trust any entity. That's why I hold my Bitcoin without an entity. I hold it on my own.
Huh.
Parang nakalagay sa mattress ko yan. Parang
Wait,
ganon.
so technically, how do you do that? I mean,
Okay.
if you don't, I understand your antipathy with going through, I don't know, BSP or U.S. Federal Reserves, whatever, approved, because the whole point of Bitcoin was to go a little bit anarchista style, right? But
Right.
okay, but before we go into the more philosophical questions, which you can you like, how do you do it without going through any of this?
Yeah.
Saan mo ilalagay sa kitchens, sa ref,
Right. Okay. So Richard, kasi all our lives we've been taught that you have to put the money in the bank, right? Now, the only way you don't put money in the bank is if you have physical cash, correct? Okay. If it's digital, you need to go through a third party, right? Bitcoin is the first time that an asset can be transacted between two people without the need for a GCash or a bank. So ibig
intermediary.
sabihin nun, yung digital wallet ko is a Bitcoin wallet that nobody holds. There's no company that owns that wallet. It's literally a Bitcoin wallet. So pag hawak ko siya, ako lang ang may hawak at control niyan. Wala nang iba. There's no third party holding my money. I'm holding my own Bitcoin. That is the safest way to hold your Bitcoin. Not, but having said that, I like the entities that are selling Bitcoin right now, the coins, GCash, Maya, kasi they're fairly large entities that should be fairly safe. I don't see any problems with working with them for majority of the people. But when you want to truly have full control of your assets, the best way to do it is to have a Bitcoin wallet that is literally off the grid. Yun na yun.
Okay, I appreciate you saying that because I was a bit worried. Are you like lawyering for Binance? No, I'm just kidding. But going back, because I'm a little bit more skeptical of Binance, to be honest about it. Imagine, and we see a lot of Chinese, like mainland China based guys doing very big in Bitcoin industry and all. I know a lot of mining being done out there is by folks from China, and they do it in other countries in the Middle East where electricity is cheap because of the. But okay, again, for those who didn't catch our previous discussion, so let's go back to brass tacks, diba? So the Bitcoin is generated through mathematical procedures and all. You need a lot of electricity, I think, for that, right? Last time I checked, so there's some debate about the info. And then it's exchange. Like, can you explain to me, like, to people, the skeletal structure? How is it generated? How is it distributed? And how and how specifically did you circumvent the intermediaries to go directly and have it? Like, did you mine it yourself? Do you have like a Bitcoin generators dyan sa
Okay.
bahay na 24/7 ang mahal sa Meralco?
Okay, so I'm gonna just address muna a couple of things before I get into that. Ano. Number one, it's a fallacy actually, and it's completely false that the biggest exchanges are Chinese, mainland Chinese companies. They're not. CZ of Binance is Canadian. He actually studied in Canada, in Toronto, and then he created it in Canada. So he's not even, Binance is not even registered in China. Cryptocurrency exchanges are banned in China. Mining is banned in China. So right now, there are actually no more miners in China. All the miners are all over the world except China. So they're losing out on that. And the other exchanges, maybe one or two are in China, but the majority are actually outside of China. And they're not even registered in China because bawal eh. So yun lang, just to ano lang, to to correct that perception. Okay, so when you talk about Bitcoin, ano, Richard, I want you to think about this. When you first of all, money. Let's talk about money. Okay, yung pesos na nasa GCash natin, saan galing yun? Think
You want
about
to
it.
go to the central banking industry and all the debate
Right.
about monetary policy. Okay.
Right. And think about it. Who decides how many supply, how much money is going to be circulating, and then how many more are we going to get? How many are we going to leverage? Red central bank, right? Raising interest, lowering interest, and everything, right? And this is where the problem lies with money. Whenever the government needs more money, they print money by borrowing more money, which is what happened in the last 6 years of the last administration. We went from a 6 trillion debt to 13, now 14, almost 15 trillion debt. When there's that much debt, that's double the amount of money circulating in the country. That actually, more money, less goods, increases the price of goods. That's the basic problem with fiat currency. Wala nang parang layer na pwede nating i-base yung actual value of money. Kung ano na lang sinabi
But
ng
no,
gobyerno,
Chris,
yun na
it
lang.
doesn't work that way. Let's not forget that the Central Bank of the Philippines does not operate in a vacuum. It operates in relation to other central banks.
Yeah.
There's the hot money, there's the market sentiment, there's the market dynamics. It's quite a spontaneous business. I don't think it's like a bunch of oligarchs sitting there and determining the value of the money. And let's not forget, as far as the value of our money is concerned, you're talking about the sovereign state. The Central
Yeah.
Bank of the Philippines represents the Philippine state, which can raise trillions of dollars in tax every year. It's, after all, that's one of the two things that at least the state does to get taxes out of that. So that's what you call sovereign guarantee. I completely agree that there's always this risk that some crazy governments or states, run their money down into the ground by doing hyperinflationary mumbo jumbos. But I'm not sure that's exactly what we're seeing over the past few years or so. If anything, actually, my personal concern is they're too concerned with inflation and with monetary supply. But you're technically correct that during COVID-19, there was a loose monetary policy. A lot of credit was going out because they wanted to make sure hindi tayo pumunta sa downturn, because a lot of businesses were not working. So you wanted the liquidity to be there. Now, I'm just saying that I see where you're coming from. You're technically not wrong to say that, you have a system whereby central banks and governments are very powerful in determining it. But where I think diverge from you is, I don't think it's completely like illogical, conspiratorial, or something like that. There is a market dynamic there. I don't always agree with how things turn out, but there's a spontaneity there that I think that's where I philosophically and I would say empirically I kind
Yeah.
of differ. But again, I understand where your criticism is coming from.
It's not that I don't think that I don't say that in a way na parang saying that they have a grand scheme or a plan to take over the world. Not that. It's more of I just don't think the government's smart enough to know that what they're doing is actually too inflationary. Which is the case in Argentina, the case in Venezuela, hyperinflation in Venezuela. I mean, everyone knows about it. In other countries like Lebanon, Afghanistan. I mean, I can name so many countries that have hyperinflation. All over Africa is hyperinflation. Their currencies are worthless. It's because they don't know better. They think I just print money. I need more money. I'll print more. So that's where the basic problem lies. Now, Bitcoin, the beauty is this. It is not controlled by a government. That's one thing I love about Bitcoin. And if we live in China, would you trust the Chinese government with a CBDC? That they can literally freeze your account if they want to at any time. As a matter of fact, they can do that now with the Philippines. Eh. Kung may ginawa kang transaction, Richard, that's over $10,000, I guarantee you, your bank's gonna call you. And if you do that 2, 3 times, suddenly your bank's gonna be frozen. I got my account frozen a couple of times already. And I got questioned by the bank. Why am I moving money around? And I'm like, that's
Maybe
my
they want to
money.
make sure it's not money laundering or doing, mumbo jumbo stuff. Well, there is a logic to that, right? It's not they just want to harass you or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
No one likes that experience. I'm just saying, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying it's not like they're totally illogical, right?
Yeah. So the irony is this, eh. I don't know if you know this statistic, ano, and you can look it up if I'm wrong, ano. Pero the number of money launderers that they actually catch through the banking system is extremely low. I don't even think it's 1%, because most of the money launderers are not going to go through the bank. They
They
do
go
it
to
in cash.
Bitcoin. They go
Oh
in
yeah, well,
Bitcoin.
yeah. So, yes, they do. Actually, there are money launderers that use Bitcoin. But if you look at it in totality, the actual like the total value of money going through money launderers use in Bitcoin is minuscule compared to the amount of cash they use for money laundering. It's literally like ganun kaliit compared to the cash used.
But then
So
again, Chris, it's as a share. How much? Again, the amount of
yeah,
Bitcoin is still limited, right? So it's a
yeah,
percentage game so far, and it's a new technology. Again, I'm just trying to be fair by
yeah,
providing
sure.
context. But
No,
thank you
no,
for also clarifying. Because I'm problema. It's not with you, Chris. I always say there are a lot of people there in the hype industry that they have this kind of conspiracy theory, Alex Jones kind of approach, which I think is a disservice to the good legitimate merits of cryptocurrencies, in theory at least, right? So I'm glad that at least you have this kind of clarification that this is not a conspiratorial view of the world. And I'm not a fan necessarily of the state institutions. I'm just saying it's not also totally, illogical what they do. But then again, I
yeah.
digress. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So anyway, so the beauty of Bitcoin is this, before Bitcoin, like I said, the only way we can transact is we need a third party that we can trust. That's going to say, yes, Chris sent money to Richard. Richard sent money to Chris. Now, that's also the problem, that you need a third party to trust. Bitcoin is the first time that I can send value, I can express value over space from me to you right now without the need for a third party to verify and validate that I have the money and I'm sending it to you. And the great thing about Bitcoin is this, compared to the current system, do you know why it takes 2 to 3 days to wire transfer money across countries? Because there is a problem of double spending. There are a lot of accounting errors that happen in the current banking system. There are way too many. And that's why they take so long to be able to move that money, because they have to make sure it's correct. And even in that scenario, there are a lot of double spending. With Bitcoin, there's never been an issue of double spending since its inception. And they've tried, maraming tumitingin din sa Bitcoin to show that it can't work, that there will be errors in it. There has been zero errors,
Yeah.
zero
Frictionless.
outages. Huh?
Frictionless.
Yeah, frictionless. Yeah, it's frictionless. Zero outages. It never goes out. Union Bank the other day. I even tweeted about this. I sent money to my GCash. I never got it, and it took them 5 days to give me my money back. With Bitcoin, if I send it, you will get it. Yun, walang outages siya. Walang hacks.
And ang
BDO
laki
got
ng
hacked.
transaction fees. I mean, GCash, I was just horrified the other day. My goodness, may 2% kaltas sila once you go above just 8,000 pesos. So kung naglagay ka na kunyari 100,000 pesos, they get 2% out of
That's
that.
crazy.
I mean, it's crazy. That's where I have issues also with financial intermediaries. Abuso na yan. Kasi wala ka naman talagang choice if you want to go through. Diba? They're
Yeah.
ubiquitous na eh. So they're juicing it. Parang it's like they control the highway and then parang bandidos, you just have to go through it. So I completely understand again, where is this Bitcoin kind of rebellious idea coming from? And I don't mean it in a negative way because minsan abuso talaga yung mga corporations at saka mga state institutions.
And I have to add, that remember, Richard, when you deposit money into GCash, right? And then you send it to me, where's the money? It's in GCash. It's still in GCash. So they're a bank. They're holding the money. All they're doing is an accounting entry. Okay, it's with Chris now. It's with Richard. Richard used it to pay, but it's all in GCash. So in reality, they don't have to charge any kind of transaction fee because they're making money off our money, because they're reinvesting that money, because according to our bank laws, they do not have Parang 10% lang ang reserves that they need to hold. 90%
Exactly.
they can do whatever they want. And everything is an
Exactly.
accounting entry.
Basta ako, I'm just, again, I'm saying, like, I have my serious concerns of how abusive this kind of system is, diba? You're right. I mean, it's just an internal ang daming kaltas. By the time you cash it out from 7-Eleven or something, ang
Yep.
dami nang kumita sa pinaghirapan mo, diba? It's really abusive. Also, wire transfers. My goodness. You wire $100, there's a kaltas of
Yeah.
$30. You wire 1,000, there's a kaltas. I mean, it's crazy how
It's
much people
crazy.
end up. So that's why, pansin niyo yung mga banks, sarap buhay, di ba? Lumalaki at lumalaki yung mga banks. You always wonder, like, bakit ang ganda ng business ng mga banking na yan, di ba? Ang ganda ng mga branches sila, lumalaki sila all the time. They're making a lot of, money at our expense while we're not investing it. Yeah, I completely sympathize with you in terms of your grievances here, because I personally feel.
Yeah. So that's where different Bitcoin is very different, ano? Kasi banks are centralized, eh. So they hold the keys. They're the guards. And you do not have access to your money without their permission. You have to ask for permission to get your money. It is very difficult to move money around. Trying to leave the country with your own money, it's very difficult. And again, you'll say, yeah, it's AMLA. Yes, but at the same time, it's your money. You really should have a right to your money. Nobody should have to quit. You don't have to defend why you have that money. Unless you've been charged with something illegal, nobody has the right to question you about your money. And that's what I like about Bitcoin. Its property is this: it is borderless. It's not controlled by any government, and because it's not controlled by any government, hindi yan mako-confiscate. Like what the US did with Russia. As much as I agree with it, when they froze the Russian dollar reserve, I like what they did, but it showed how dangerous it is to have one country with that much power to be able to decide unilaterally, I don't like your view, I'll freeze your money. That's what happened in Canada with the truckers. They protested. What did the Canadian government do? They froze their bank accounts. So what I like about Bitcoin is no government will be able to freeze your bank accounts because it's not a bank account. Like I said, you're literally holding your own money.
But obviously, of course, the counter concern there would be there's no guarantee, sovereign guarantee. If something goes wrong, wala kang pananagutan, right? I mean, this is just in a system, right? I mean,
What are you talking about
let's
guarantee?
say
Like a PDIC?
I don't know, like, I don't know, you lose your password or something
Right.
crazy happens, and good luck. You're never gonna take back that money. But in the bank, you can always show your ID. You can bring a
Yeah.
witness. Kung I don't know, namatay ka, it will go to someone else. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
So yeah,
that's the
so
other side. At least alam mo who to go to if even though you don't like that person, right?
yeah, absolutely. And what this is teaching us now is to be very responsible for our own money. Much like if you have a prized possession at home, I'm sure you're very careful with it, right? If you have a nice car, you're very careful with it. You have jewelry. I know people with Rolexes. Very, very careful. They put it in a vault. They make sure they know all the keys, passwords to it, and they lock it up. It's the same. When you have something valuable, you really have to know how to take care of it. Yun lang yun. We've been taught to give the responsibility to somebody else. And that's the problem. It needs to it's a mindset shift to be able to say, yeah, I'm responsible for my own sovereignty, my own money, and that kind of freedom comes with that responsibility. If you don't want the responsibility, give it to the ETF. They'll take care of it. You don't have real control of it, but at least somebody's, hopefully they don't do a bank run. Yun lang. So that's the difference.
Yeah. No, again, I see the upside, the downside discussion. Siguro ang magiging disagreement lang natin. I feel one of us is more focusing on the upside here, one side of it. But I think this is part of the healthy discussion. Now, I want to move to the second part of our discussion about Bitcoin, more the practical parts, because you said something very interesting. That what you do is you do it without any intermediary, and also your practical advice to people who want to get involved and like want to be a bit conservative about it. Maybe not go and ride the hype machine right away, especially now na upward swing. You know what I'm saying? So maybe we can do that in the next episode. Thank you very much
Okay.
again for that, Chris.
All right.
Appreciate it.